You are watching the New American Media. Live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, the United States of America, Los Angeles, California, to be quite specific. Hello, thank you for listening, everybody. My name is Brian Engelman. Welcome to thenewamericanmedia.com. This is a special edition of Agree to Disagree, going on a little bit earlier than usual, but that's the fun of running a guerrilla radio station. You get to broadcast when you feel like it. We're going to be speaking with Dan Johnson of PANDA, People Against NDAA. Do you know what NDAA is? Well, Dan is going to join us today. We're going to talk about a couple of things, including a little bit of cyber terrorism in the financial markets. Could it be Iran? Well, at least that's what we're hearing right now. We'll bring Dan Johnson into the program. Dan, welcome back, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, Brian, and thank you for having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure having you on. I want to give you this forum to announce to everybody where you're going to be tonight. Let's get that out of the way first and foremost. Oh, before we get to that, if you are not following us on Twitter, please do so. We're at American_media_. Our guest, Dan, you can check him out on Twitter at Panda Unite. And if you're listening to this after the fact on YouTube, please click subscribe on that youtube.com/The New American Media page. But Dan, you have a special announcement for everybody. You're going to also be speaking to the world a little bit later. Tell them about it.
Yeah, I'll be on. I have the honor and the opportunity to be on Coast to Coast AM with John B. Wells tonight at 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. Pacific. And I'll be very excited to be on that show, and it's a great opportunity, and I hope you all are able to tune in. And if not, you should be able to listen to back issues of the show on the Coast to Coast AM website, coasttocoastam.com.
And Dan, why don't you give everybody your website information if they want to get some more information about you and the NDAA?
Our website is pandaunite.org. We are People Against the NDAA. Again, our website is pandaunite.org for anything National Defense Authorization Act or National Detaining Activists Act related.
Well, let's get into a few things real quick. Number one, just remind those people who supported President Obama and continue to do so or are considering voting for President Obama, what did he do with the NDAA? Just because this is a story you're not going to get on the mainstream media. It doesn't exist on ABC, NBC, or CBS. So what did President Obama do? What is the NDAA? Why are you concerned?
Yes, and this is a joint collaboration between Congress and the President. And the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, is a bill that's passed every year for 48 years by Congress. And now it allows the military to arrest you, to not tell you why, and to not give you a trial to prove whether you're the person he needs to arrest or not. It also, on top of that, places the law of war on American soil. So President Obama signed it on New Year's Eve, Congress passed it, and the Senate passed it on the anniversary of the Bill of Rights. And we are completely dedicated to fighting the introduction of military law on American soil, which is exactly what happened on New Year's Eve 2011.
Now, recently a judge blocked this, but then the administration came back and fought it instantly and appealed. What do you make of that act? What do you make of that maneuver, if you will?
I saw a article today on Indie Media recently called "Obama's Justice Department Goes Judge Shopping in NDAA Case." And it's a very good depiction of what happened here. Judge Catherine Forrest put a temporary injunction on the NDAA in May, and the government, even at that point, the Justice Department refused to acknowledge what she actually said. She ended up having to clarify it in June. And then around come August, she hears the case again to see if there will be a permanent injunction against the NDAA, declaring it unconstitutional. She releases that permanent injunction this month, and within 24 hours of her releasing that permanent injunction, in direct opposition to what the president said, that he would not use it to detain American citizens, the Obama administration appealed and filed for a stay, thus went judge shopping and found a judge that was willing to side with them and give them a stay on Catherine Forrest's permanent unconstitutional ruling on the NDAA and constitutional injunction against this unconstitutional law. So what we're at right now is the Obama administration is fighting hard to keep the power to detain American citizens without a charge and without a trial.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, Dan. I'm very thrilled to hear that, but thankfully in 39 days or so we have a choice to make for president. We have a big choice between the Republican and Democrat nominees, Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, regarding the NDAA,
Obama?
right?
What?
They're very different on their stance on the NDAA, right? Or am I misled?
You are slightly misled and also misleading yourself. The Romney, when he was actually asked this question, that Governor Romney, would you have signed the National Defense Authorization Act? And he replied, yes, he would have, and he does believe it is right for America. So Governor Romney and President Obama are both in full favor of the NDAA. And so as far as the differences between the candidates, there's about 100 and something similarities, but as for finding differences besides their skin color, I'm not sure.
Now, we're going to have the opportunity to speak with Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson on Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific. You guys can check it out live by going to thenewamericanmedia.com and clicking on the right-hand side where it says TNAM Radio. You can listen live. And I'm not exactly certain. I haven't really scanned Governor Johnson's platform yet, but do you know, is he in favor of the National Defense Authorization Act as well, or has he made a different stance on that?
He has made it absolutely clear, an absolute stance, that he does not support the indefinite detention provisions in the National Defense Authorization Act, and as president, he will work to repeal that. He has made that very clear in his campaign. He is one of the only candidates, actually the only candidate left in the race, that has stood out and said that the NDAA is anathema to everything America stands for, and he will fight it.
And that would be kind of similar to what Congressman Ron Paul, that was one of the things he was also saying. He was against the NDAA while he was running, correct?
And he had, yes, not only that, but he had the opportunity to be against the NDAA, and he actually introduced a bill in Congress against the NDAA. It will not be considered, unfortunately, this year, but it did garner several co-sponsors, and it would have completely stopped the NDAA dead in its tracks. So he even introduced action against the NDAA, not just in words, but he had the opportunity to introduce action. And even though Gary Johnson isn't in that position, I'm sure he would do the same based on his previous actions in office.
And Gary Johnson, obviously the former governor of New Mexico, so this isn't a complete outsider. It's someone who has been around the system for a while, but as you pointed out so correctly, it's not just a President Obama thing. Congress, pretty much unilateral, they went across party line to support this thing. So I guess my question is, for all the people concerned about the Patriot Act and saying, oh, George Bush and Dick Cheney, it's scary, it's neocon, and they're trying to take over the world, and it's fear-mongering, and it's war-mongering, this Patriot Act, and it must be stopped. It's unconstitutional. He should be thrown out of office for treason. These people seem to be silent now because their guy, President Obama, just signed this NDAA. Do you think it's purely political? Do you think people are knowingly burying their heads in the sand like ostriches? Or do you think they're just not aware of how dangerous this NDAA provisions 1021 and 1022 really are?
Brian, I would say it's political, but only with the media. And there are people out there who, just because Obama wants the same thing, and just because he's Obama, even though he wants the same type of power that George Bush wanted, then there are people out there who say that, oh, well, he's our president, and I'm a Democrat, and et cetera, et cetera. But I think most of the politics and most of the party bias and most of the support of the NDAA comes from the mainstream media and those in control of the mainstream media. They're the people who have openly and very candidly censored any NDAA information from coming out. You'll find some NDAA info in print media. You'll even find approximately 3 minutes or so on Fox and maybe a half hour on MSNBC. But for comparison, we're 2 weeks in, or 2 weeks or a week or something of the sort. We are several days at least into the NDAA incident. Or not NDAA, the Libyan incident, the ambassador being killed, Chris Stevens, and we are several days away from that, and they are still beating it like a dead horse. Whereas NDAA got approximately, not counting Freedom Watch and Rachel Maddow, probably got 10 minutes of coverage.
Well, you also have Russia Today. You have Coast to Coast AM. There are people that have been following NDAA, but you're talking, as far as like the 5 major, quote-unquote major / dinosaur media outlets.
CNN, ABC, MSNBC,
They're not
CBS.
touching it.
Yes.
They don't want to deal with it. We only have you for another minute or two, and we're going to let you get running here. I wanted to ask you specifically about this. There's stories out. This one from yesterday, September 27th, on abcnews.com. Hackers, possibly from the Middle East, block U.S. banks' websites. Let me just go through a couple of points on this, and I want to get your thought, because when I hear things like this, it really woke me up today. Checking out this news story, because you hear about electromagnetic pulse, you hear about some sort of attack or some sort of dirty bomb that could disrupt things and, kind of be used as either an October surprise or a false flag or some sort of act of aggression, whatever the case. But if you shut down the banking system worldwide, it might have the same exact effect. The financial and banking industries are on high alert tonight, this was yesterday, as a massive cyber attack continues, with potentially millions of customers from Bank of America, PNC, and Wells Fargo finding themselves blocked from banking online. There's an elevated level of threat, said Doug Johnson, a vice president and senior advisor of the American Bankers Association. The threat level is now high. This is twice as large as any flood we have ever seen, said Dick Clark, an ABC News consultant and former cybersecurity czar. Sources told ABC News that the so-called denial of service attacks had been caused by hackers from the Middle East who had secretly transmitted signals commandeering thousands of computers worldwide. So my question is this. This person, 2 paragraphs later, says, hopefully it can be up soon, wrote Stacy Briggs Gerlach. Never realized how dependent I am on it. So my question to you is, as the president's trying to get internet kill switch, in case of emergency, we have to have the authority to shut down the internet for your own good. Could you see something like this becoming a false flag, or something legitimate that is used to censor how we are allowed to communicate, how we're allowed to gather information, and perhaps being shut out in the dark for an extended period of time, like you see in North Korea, like you see in China, where the state media literally controls the information? Any thoughts?
Well, you can spin any story to fit what you want it to utilize, or to what you want to utilize the story for. And this particular story about cyber attacks and pinging on Iran, it would be logical for Iran to strike at the banking industry because of the sanctions the United States has placed on that Middle Eastern nation. So not only would it be logical for them to do that, but it would be one of the greatest ways to strike at the Western world. So I'm not surprised that they would do it. I'm also not surprised that if the narrative spins toward, okay, we need to hit Iran or they're going to take out our banking system, along the same lines as the country's going to fall apart if we don't pass TARP. So I see this as they may take that narrative in that way.
Yeah, I love the TARP one. That was fantastic. Almost as good as Nancy Pelosi saying it's 2,700 pages of healthcare legislation. I can't wait to pass it to find out what's in it. It's those little moments where you realize what's going on that you got to press pause and step back a second. But, Dan, we're just about out of time here. I want to congratulate you for all the work you're doing at Panda. How many chapters have you started now, and where are they at? Because I've noticed you guys are growing pretty fast.
We blew past the 80-chapter deadline last week, and we are seriously actually earlier this week we did that, and then we are seriously moving toward almost 100 chapters nationwide. We're almost in 40 states, and we were spinning our wheels for a little bit, but in the past few months we've started to take off, started to ground ourselves, and several of our chapters, if they haven't already had a victory, they are moving very close to it, and they're starting to talk to their counties and starting to work with their local officials to stop NDAA.
And I guess that really is something where if you can't get the change to happen from the top down, since those are the people passing it, the president and the Congress, I guess you have to start from the bottom up, and everybody reach out locally to your local sheriffs, to your local representatives, and make sure that they're aware that their oath is not to uphold illegal legislation. It's to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, whether it's an attack from abroad or some erosion from within. If people want to get more information, Dan, where can they find you again?
They can find us at pandaunite.org.
Very good. Well, Dan, have a good time. Say hello to our buddy John B. Wells tonight. He's been on our program about 3 times now. We definitely enjoy what he's doing over there on Coast to Coast, and I'm looking forward to your conversation tonight. We'll be sure to tune in, all right?
All right, that sounds good, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Dan. Take care. That is Dan Johnson of PANDA, People Against NDAA. Go check him out. Tell you what, we're going to take a quick break, and on the other side, we will be back. We'll be talking with Blake, the eccentric Wally, from FreedomizerRadio.com. I co-host with him on Mondays over on FreedomizerRadio.com. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of things in just a moment. Thanks for listening to Agree to Disagree here on thenewamericanmedia.com. You are watching The New American Media.